Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars through the main view screen. The space around them looked peaceful, but Jake knew better. War was coming to their galaxy, and it was unlike anything humans had ever faced before. The communication officer, Lieutenant Sam Rivers, turned in his chair. His face was pale and worried. "Captain, we're getting emergency signals from the outer colonies. Multiple ships are reporting attacks." Jake moved closer to Sam's station. "What kind of attacks?" "Unknown vessels, sir. Silver ships that move faster than anything we've seen. They're destroying everything in their path." Sam's hands shook as he worked the controls. New Austin Colony just went silent. So did the mining station at Kepler 7. Jake felt his stomach drop. New Austin had over 2 million people. The mining station had families living there too. Any survivors? A few ships managed to escape. They're heading toward Earth, but... Sam stopped talking and listened to his headset. His face went even whiter. "Captain, Admiral Patterson is calling from Earth Command, Priority 1. The main screen changed to show Admiral Lisa Patterson sitting at her desk on Earth. She looked tired and scared. Behind her, Jake could see officers running back and forth. Everyone looked panicked. "Jake," Admiral Patterson said without any greeting, "how fast can you get the Liberty back to Earth?" 3 days at maximum speed, Jake replied. "Admiral, what's happening out there?" Patterson rubbed her forehead. "We're calling it the Zephyrian Empire. That's what the survivors are calling them. Jake, in the past week, they've destroyed 15 colonies and 12 military outposts. We've never seen ships like theirs." Jake's chief engineer, Kelly Brooks, stepped forward. She was a tough woman who had served on starships for 20 years. "What kind of ships, Admiral?" "Crystal-like hulls that seem to bend light around them. Energy weapons that cut through our shields like they're not even there. And Jake," Patterson paused, "they don't seem to be trying very hard. Our best battleships barely slow them down." The bridge went quiet. Everyone was listening now. Jake could see the fear in their eyes. The Liberty was a good ship with a good crew, but if the Navy's best battleships couldn't stop these aliens, what chance did they have? "All ships are falling back to Earth," Patterson continued. "We're setting up defensive positions around the solar system. It might be our last stand." Jake nodded. "We'll be there in 3 days, Admiral." "Good. And Jake? Bring everyone home. We're going to need every ship and every person we can get." The screen went dark. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had been through battles before, but nothing like this. Sam was just 25 years old. Kelly had grandchildren on Earth. They were all scared, but they were trying not to show it. "Captain," said Dr. Amanda Price, the ship's science officer. She had been studying the reports from the surviving ships. "I think we need to see this for ourselves." Jake turned to her. Amanda was smart, maybe the smartest person on the ship. If she had an idea, he wanted to hear it. "The attack patterns," Amanda continued. "The survivors all described the same thing. These Zephyrians attack in perfect formation. They use the same tactics every time. It's like they're following a script." "What are you thinking?" Jake asked. "I'm thinking they've done this before. Many times. They've perfected their attack methods by conquering other species." Amanda pulled up a star map on her screen. "Look at this. The survivors report seeing hundreds of different ship types in the Zephyrian fleet. Not just Zephyrian ships, but ships from other species too." Kelly stepped closer to look at the map. "You think they're using captured ships?" "I think they're using captured everything. Ships, weapons, maybe even captured crews forced to fight for them." Amanda's voice was grim. "They're not just conquerors, they're collectors. They take the best of what each species has and add it to their own forces." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "How many species do you think they've conquered?" "Based on the ship types the survivors reported, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds." Amanda looked directly at Jake. "Captain, I think we need to learn everything we can about how they fight before we get to Earth." "What do you mean?" "I mean we should find them, watch them, study their tactics." Amanda's idea was dangerous, and everyone knew it. "If we just run back to Earth with everyone else, we'll be fighting blind. But if we can learn how they operate..." Jake thought about it. The smart thing would be to follow orders and return to Earth immediately. But Amanda was right. If they arrived at Earth knowing nothing about the enemy, they would just be another ship waiting to die. "Sam," Jake said, "plot a course to intercept the refugee ships. I want to talk to the survivors myself." "Yes, sir." Jake walked back to his command chair. Around him, his crew went to work. They were still scared, but now they had something to do. That was important. Fear could paralyze people, but having a mission gave them focus. 2 hours later, they caught up with a damaged freighter called the New Hope. The captain was an older man named Bill Carter, who had run cargo between the outer colonies for 30 years. His ship was badly damaged, with burn marks across the hull where energy weapons had hit it. Jake met with Captain Carter in the Liberty's conference room. Carter was shaking as he told his story. "They came out of nowhere," Carter said. "One minute the space around New Austin was empty. The next minute, there were hundreds of silver ships just appearing like ghosts. They didn't even warn us. Just started shooting." "How long did the battle last?" Jake asked. "Battle?" Carter laughed, but there was no humor in it. "There was no battle. It was over in 20 minutes. 20 minutes to destroy everything we built over 50 years. Amanda leaned forward. "Did you see how they attacked?" Perfect lines. Like they were dancing instead of fighting. "Our defense platforms shot at them, but their shields just absorbed everything. Then they would fire back, and whatever they hit just disappeared." Jake exchanged looks with Amanda. This matched what the other survivors had reported. "Captain Carter," Jake said carefully, "we're thinking about going back. To study them. To learn how they fight." Carter stared at him like he was crazy. "Son, you go back there, and you'll die. Simple as that. These things aren't like us. They don't make mistakes, they don't get tired. They just kill everything in their path and move on to the next target." After Carter left, Jake called a meeting with his senior officers. The conference room was crowded with worried faces. "I know this is dangerous," Jake began, "but I think Amanda is right. We need to learn about these Zephyrians before we face them in a real battle." Kelly spoke up first. "Captain, with respect, one ship against their entire fleet? That's not dangerous, that's suicide." "Not if we're smart about it," Amanda said. "We don't engage them, we just watch, learn their patterns, figure out how they think." Sam looked nervous. "But what if they detect us?" "Then we run," Jake said simply. "The Liberty is fast. We stay at extreme range, use passive sensors only. If they spot us, we jump to hyperspace immediately." The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Kelly sighed. "Well, I guess dying out here is better than dying at Earth and taking 2 billion people with us." Jake looked around the room. "Anyone who wants to transfer to one of the refugee ships can do so. No questions asked. This is volunteer only." Nobody moved. Jake felt proud of his crew, even though he was terrified of what they were about to do. "All right then," he said. "Let's go learn how to fight the impossible." The USS Liberty had been following the Zephyrian fleet for 3 weeks now. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the shadows of the bridge, watching the enemy ships move across the star field like deadly silver fish. His crew worked quietly at their stations, afraid that even a whisper might give them away. Lieutenant Sam Rivers looked up from his communication console. "Captain, they're attacking another system. Looks like the Centauri colonies." Jake moved to stand behind Sam's chair. On the screen, they could see dozens of Zephyrian ships moving into perfect attack formation. The alien vessels were beautiful, in a terrifying way, their crystal hulls catching and bending starlight like living diamonds. "How long until they reach the colonies?" Jake asked quietly. 18 minutes at their current speed," Sam replied. "Should I try to warn them?" Jake shook his head. "They already know. Look at the long-range sensors, the colonists are already evacuating." Dr. Amanda Price looked up from her science station. For 3 weeks she had been studying every piece of data they could gather about the Zephyrians. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, and she had lost weight from skipping meals. "Captain, I'm seeing the same pattern again," Amanda said. "They're using formation Delta 7. That's the same formation they used at New Austin Kepler 7 and the Ross system." Jake walked over to Amanda's station. She had covered 3 monitors with charts and diagrams showing Zephyrian attack patterns. Red lines showed ship movements, blue dots showed weapon firing sequences, and green circles showed shield configurations. They really do fight the same way every time, Jake said. Not just the same way, Amanda corrected. The exact same way. Watch this. She pulled up recordings from 3 different battles. Ship positioning, weapon timing, shield rotations, everything is identical down to the second. Chief Engineer Kelly Brooks joined them at the science station. She had been working with Amanda to analyze Zephyrian technology. It's like they're running a computer program, Kelly said. No creativity, no adaptation, just pure efficiency. But it works, said Lieutenant Commander Tony Garcia, the weapons officer. He had been trying to find weaknesses in Zephyrian defenses for weeks. Look at the results. They haven't lost a single ship in any battle we've observed. Jake watched the main screen as the Zephyrian fleet reached the Centauri colonies. The attack began exactly as Amanda had predicted. The alien ships moved into formation, their weapons charged in perfect synchronization, and they began systematically destroying the human defensive platforms. Time to destruction of the first colony? Jake asked. Sam checked his readings. 14 minutes, sir. Same as New Austin, Amanda noted. Same as all the others. Jake felt frustrated. They had learned a lot about how the Zephyrians fought, but they still had no idea how to stop them. The alien ships were faster, stronger, and better armed than anything humanity had ever built. Worse, they fought with machine-like precision. That left no room for error. Captain, called Sergeant Major Beth Collins from the back of the bridge. She had been working with the ship's Marines to study human military history. I think I found something. Jake turned to look at her. Beth was a tough soldier who had fought in the colonial wars. If anyone could find a way to fight in superior enemy, it would be her. What did you find? I've been studying every underdog victory in human history, Beth said. David and Goliath, the American Revolution, the Battle of Thermopylae. Every time a smaller force beat a bigger one. And they all have one thing in common. The bigger force was overconfident. They thought they knew exactly how the battle would go, so they didn't adapt when things changed. Amanda looked interested. You think the Zephyrians are overconfident? I think they're worse than overconfident, Beth replied. I think they're trapped by their own success. They've won so many battles the same way that they can't imagine losing. Tony spoke up from his weapons station. But their shields are still impenetrable. Their weapons still cut through our hulls like paper. Overconfidence doesn't change physics. No, Beth agreed. But it might change tactics. Captain, what if we could make them fight differently? Force them out of their comfort zone? Jake thought about this. You mean make them improvise? Exactly. These aliens have conquered dozens of species, maybe hundreds. But I bet they've never faced an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. On the main screen, the first Centauri colony exploded in a ball of fire. The Zephyrian fleet moved on to the next target without pausing. 12 minutes later, that colony was gone too. They're so efficient, Amanda muttered. No wasted motion, no unnecessary destruction. They destroy only what they need to destroy to achieve their goals. That's another weakness, Beth said. They're not emotional. They don't get angry or frustrated, but humans do. And sometimes anger makes us do things that don't make sense to a logical mind. Jake began to see what Beth was getting at. You think we should make them angry? I think we should make them confused. Do things they don't expect. Force them to make decisions they've never had to make before. Kelly looked skeptical. One ship against their entire fleet? Even if we confuse them, we're still outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Not if we're smart about it, Beth replied. We don't have to beat their whole fleet. We just have to prove that they can be beaten. Show other species that these aliens aren't invincible. Jake walked back to his command chair. Around him, his crew continued their work. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing it was probably suicide. But now, for the first time in weeks, Jake felt a spark of hope. Amanda, he said, I want you to analyze their communication patterns. See if you can figure out how their command structure works. Already on it, Captain. I think they use a rigid hierarchy. Lower-ranking ships can't act without permission from higher-ranking ones. Tony, I want you to design some unconventional attack patterns. Things that don't follow standard military doctrine. Unconventional how? Surprise me, Jake said. Beth, work with Tony on this. I want tactics that would make no sense to a logical mind. Yes, sir. Jake looked at the main screen, where the Zephyrian fleet was finishing its destruction of the Centauri system. In a few hours, they would move on to the next target and the next. Eventually, they would reach Earth. Kelly, Jake said, how's our stealth system holding up? So far, so good. We're running dark and staying at maximum sensor range. They haven't detected us yet. Good. Because I think it's time we stopped just watching. Sam turned in his chair. Captain, I want to test a theory. We're going to try something the Zephyrians have never seen before. What's that, sir? Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. We're going to fight dirty. The bridge went quiet except for the hum of the ship's systems. Everyone understood what the captain was suggesting. They were going to attack the most powerful military force in the galaxy. It was insane. It was impossible. But as Jake looked at the faces of his crew, he saw something that surprised him. They weren't afraid anymore, they were excited. For the first time since this war began, they had a plan. It might not work. They would probably die trying. But they were going to show the Zephyrians something they had never seen before. Humans who refused to give up, no matter how impossible. The odds. All right, people, Jake said. Let's teach these aliens what happens when they pick a fight with humanity. Captain Jake Morrison watched the lone Zephyrian scout ship through the Liberty's main screen. The silver vessel moved through space like a hunting shark, scanning the debris field where the human colony of Haven 7 used to exist. It was perfect for their first test. Target acquired, Lieutenant Commander Tony Garcia reported from his weapons station. One scout ship, no escorts. Just like we planned. Jake nodded. For the past week, they had been tracking individual Zephyrian ships, looking for the right opportunity. This scout was separated from the main fleet by several light hours. If their plan worked, they could attack and escape before reinforcements arrived. Amanda, any change in their scanning patterns? Jake asked. Dr. Amanda Price shook her head. Same routine they've used everywhere else. Systematic grid search checking for survivors or salvageable technology. They're not expecting any trouble. Good. Ryan, are you ready? Chief Navigator Ryan Holmes looked nervous, but his hands were steady on the controls. Hyperspace jump calculated, Captain. It's going to be close. Jake had asked Ryan to plan something that broke every rule of space combat. Instead of approaching from a safe distance, they would jump out of hyperspace almost on top of the enemy ship. No one had ever tried such a dangerous maneuver in battle. Kelly, how are the engines? Chief Engineer Kelly Brooks checked her readings, running at 110%. I can give you maybe 5 minutes at this level before we risk a core breach. That's all we need. Beth, your Marines ready? Sergeant Major Beth Collins nodded from her position near the tactical display. Ready, Captain. If this works, we'll have about 30 seconds to gather data before we have to run. Jake took a deep breath. Around him, his crew waited for the order. They had spent days planning this attack, but they all knew it was still mostly guesswork. They were about to test their theories against an enemy that had never lost a battle. All right, people, let's make history. Ryan, execute jump. The stars disappeared as the Liberty dropped into hyperspace. For a few seconds, they traveled through the strange blue-white tunnel between normal space and the higher dimensions. Then, they emerged directly behind the Zephyrian scout ship, so close that Jake could see details on the alien hull. Fire! Jake shouted. Tony's fingers flew over his controls. Instead of firing in neat, organized patterns like human ships normally did, he unleashed every weapon at once in a chaotic barrage. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, and railguns all fired at different times and different angles. The Zephyrian ship's shields flared as they absorbed the attack. But something was wrong. The shields flickered and wavered instead of maintaining their usual steady glow. Their shields are fluctuating, Amanda reported excitedly. The random firing pattern is creating interference. The Zephyrian ship began to turn, trying to bring its weapons to bear on the Liberty, but Ryan was already moving, spinning their ship in a wild corkscrew pattern that no military academy would ever teach. "They're trying to lock onto us," Sam reported from communications. "But they can't get a clear targeting solution." Jake watched the enemy ship struggle to respond. For the first time, he was seeing Zephyrians react to something unexpected. Their perfect formation was broken. Their systematic approach was failing. "Tony, keep firing. Don't let them recover." The weapons officer grinned as he unleashed another barrage. This time, he mixed explosive missiles with energy weapons and even launched some of their mining charges, creating a confusing cloud of explosions around the enemy ship. One of the mining charges detonated close to the Zephyrian hull. To everyone's surprise, it actually damaged their shields. "Did you see that?" Kelly shouted from her station. "The mining charge worked. Their shields aren't designed to handle that type of explosion." "Amanda, are you recording this?" "Every second, Captain. This is incredible data." The Zephyrian ship finally managed to fire back. A beam of pure energy lanced out toward the Liberty, but Ryan was ready. He threw their ship into a spiral dive that brought them under the enemy's firing arc. "Time to go," Jake ordered. "Ryan, get us out of here. Jumping now." The Liberty disappeared back into hyperspace just as more Zephyrian ships began arriving. They had spent less than 2 minutes in combat, but it felt like hours. When they emerged in normal space, the crew was quiet for a moment. Then Tony let out a whoop of joy. "We did it. We actually hurt them." "More than that," Amanda said, studying her readings. "We confused them. Look at this communication traffic I intercepted. They're asking their command ship for new orders. They don't know how to respond to our tactics." Jake felt a surge of hope. "What exactly did we learn?" Amanda pulled up her analysis on the main screen. 3 things. First, their shields can be disrupted by chaotic energy patterns. Second, they can't target effectively when we move unpredictably. And third, they have to ask permission before changing their tactics. "That last one is important," Beth added. "It means there's a delay in their responses. If we can keep them confused long enough, we can stay ahead of their decision-making process." Kelly looked at her engineering reports. "Captain, we took some damage from our own maneuvers. The engines are stressed and we lost some hull plating from those crazy spins Ryan pulled. But we're alive," Ryan said with a grin. "And they're probably very confused right now." Jake walked to the center of the bridge. "All right, people. This was just the beginning. We proved that these aliens can be hurt. Now we need to figure out how to hurt them badly enough to matter." Over the next 2 weeks, the Liberty conducted 6 more hit-and-run attacks. Each time, they tried different tactics. Sometimes they attacked from multiple directions using fighter drones. Sometimes they used the gravity wells of nearby planets to slingshot around obstacles. Once they even hid inside an asteroid field and launched mining charges like torpedoes. Every attack taught them something new. The Zephyrians were incredibly powerful, but they were also predictable. They responded to every human tactic with standard countermeasures from their military manual. The problem was that humans weren't following any manual. "They're getting frustrated," Amanda reported after their latest attack. "I'm intercepting more and more communications between their ships and their command structure. They're requesting new tactics to deal with us." "Are they getting them?" Jake asked. "Some, but it takes time. Their command ship has to analyze our tactics, develop countermeasures, and then transmit new orders to the entire fleet. We're moving faster than their bureaucracy can handle." Jake nodded. This was what Beth had predicted. The Zephyrians' greatest strength was also their weakness. Their perfect organization made them efficient, but it also made them slow to adapt. "Captain," Sam said from his communication station, "I'm picking up a priority transmission from Earth Command." The main screen flickered to show Admiral Patterson. She looked even more tired than before, but there was something different in her eyes. Hope, maybe. "Jake, I don't know what you're doing out there, but keep doing it. We're getting reports from all over the galaxy. Zephyrian fleets are slowing down, changing course, even stopping their attacks to regroup. You've got them worried." Jake felt a chill of excitement. "Admiral, are you saying our attacks are affecting their entire campaign?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. For the first time since this war started, they're not moving forward on schedule. Whatever you're doing, it's working. After the transmission ended, Jake looked around at his crew. They had started this mission hoping to learn something useful. Instead, they had discovered something incredible. The Zephyrians could be beaten. "All right, people," Jake said. "It's time to take this to the next level. We've been annoying them with pinpricks. Now we need to hit them where it really hurts." "What do you have in mind?" Amanda asked. Jake smiled. "We're going to attack their command ship." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew that the Zephyrian command ship was the most heavily defended vessel in their fleet. It was surrounded by dozens of escort ships and protected by shields that could deflect the firepower of an entire human battle group. "Captain," Kelly said carefully, "that's not just dangerous, that's impossible." "So is everything else we've done," Jake replied. "But we've learned something these aliens don't understand. Sometimes impossible is just another word for unexpected." Beth stood up from her station. "I'm with the captain. We've shown that they can bleed. Now let's show them they can die." One by one, the rest of the crew nodded their agreement. They had come too far to stop now. The Liberty was just one ship against an empire that had conquered galaxies. But they were one ship that refused to give up, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. The asteroid field around the destroyed Mars colony looked like a graveyard of broken dreams. Captain Jake Morrison floated in his command chair aboard the USS Liberty, watching chunks of red rock drift past the main screen. Somewhere in this debris field, they would make their last stand. "Kelly, report," Jake said quietly. Chief Engineer Kelly Brooks looked up from her station with tired eyes. "We've stripped everything non-essential, Captain. The recreational areas, the science labs, even half the crew quarters. I've converted it all into extra reactor shielding and weapon power." Jake nodded. For the past 3 days his crew had been turning the Liberty into a weapon designed for one purpose: to ram the Zephyrian command ship and detonate their reactor at the moment of impact. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. "Tony, weapon status?" Lieutenant Commander Tony Garcia ran his hands through his hair. "All weapon systems modified for maximum damage output. We'll have maybe 30 seconds of sustained fire before the power relays burn out. After that," he shrugged. "After that we ram," Jake finished. "Amanda, any change in the Zephyrian fleet's approach?" Dr. Amanda Price checked her long-range sensors. "They're still coming, Captain. 200 ships, just like we predicted. The command ship is in the center of the formation, protected by escorts on all sides." Jake felt his stomach tighten. 200 ships against one. Those were impossible odds, even for humans who specialized in impossible situations. "Sam, any response to our challenge?" Lieutenant Sam Rivers shook his head. "Nothing, sir. Radio silence from the entire fleet." 3 hours ago, Jake had broadcast a message on all frequencies, both human and Zephyrian. He had challenged their war marshal to single combat, ship against ship, winner takes all. It was a desperate bluff, but he hoped the alien commander's pride might make him accept. "Captain," said Sergeant Major Beth Collins from her position near the tactical display, "the crew is asking for a final briefing." Jake looked around the bridge at his officers. These people had followed him into hell itself. They deserved to know exactly what they were facing. "Put me on ship-wide communication." Sam nodded and opened the channel. "You're on, Captain." Jake stood up and faced the main screen, knowing that 800 people throughout the ship were watching him. "This is Captain Morrison. In approximately 1 hour, the Zephyrian fleet will arrive at our position. We all know why we're here. Earth needs time to prepare its defenses, and we're going to buy them that time." He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. They were scared, but they were also determined. "I won't lie to you. We probably won't survive this battle. But we're going to make it count. Every second we keep that fleet busy is another second for our families to prepare. Every shot we fire is one less shot they can fire at Earth." Cock took a deep breath. "We've learned something important over the past few weeks. These aliens aren't invincible. They can be hurt, they can be confused, and they can be beaten. Today we're going to prove that to the entire galaxy. The Liberty has always been more than just a ship. It's been our home, our family. And today, it's going to be our weapon. We're going to show the Zephyrians what happens when they threaten humanity. Jake looked directly into the camera. I'm proud to serve with all of you. Now let's go save our species. The communication channel closed. Around the bridge, his crew went back to their preparations. But Jake could see something in their eyes that hadn't been there before. Peace, maybe. They had accepted what was coming. Captain, Amanda said suddenly, I'm detecting hyperspace distortions. They're arriving. The main screen filled with silver ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. The Zephyrian fleet spread out across space like a deadly flower, with the massive command ship at its center. Jake had seen recordings of Zephyrian vessels before, but seeing 200 of them in person was overwhelming. My God, Kelly whispered. Look at the size of that command ship. The Zephyrian flagship was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the Liberty. Its crystalline hull caught the light from the distant sun and threw it back in rainbow patterns. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Sam, are you picking up any communications? Yes, sir. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Sam listened to his headset for a moment, then looked up in surprise. Captain, they're responding to your challenge. What do they say? The War Marshal will accept single combat. He says... Sam paused. He says he's curious to see how the primitive humans plan to die. Jake felt a surge of anger, but he pushed it down. Anger was good. It would keep him focused. Well, we'll just have to show him. The Zephyrian fleet began moving into a wide circle around the asteroid field. Jake realized they were creating an arena for the duel. Apparently, the War Marshal wanted his entire fleet to watch him destroy the Liberty. Ryan, take us out to meet them. Chief Navigator Ryan Holmes engaged. The engines. The Liberty moved out of the asteroid field toward the center of the Zephyrian formation. As they approached, one ship detached itself from the fleet and moved to meet them. It was the command ship itself. He's actually doing it, Amanda said, in amazement. The War Marshal is coming out to fight us personally. Jake studied the approaching vessel. Up close, it was even more impressive. Energy fields danced across its hull like living lightning. Weapons ports opened and closed in what looked like breathing patterns. It was more like a living creature than a spaceship. Tony, target their shield generators. Which ones, Captain? I count at least 50, Jake smiled grimly. All of them. The two ships approached each other slowly, like ancient knights riding to meet in single combat. Around them, the Zephyrian fleet watched in perfect silence. Captain, Beth said from her station, I've been thinking about our boarding plan. Jake turned to her. The boarding plan was their backup option in case the ramming attack failed. Beth would lead a team of Marines onto the Zephyrian command ship to try to capture their War Marshal. What about it? If we can take him alive, it might throw their entire command structure into chaos. These aliens rely on rigid hierarchy. Remove the leader and they might not know what to do. That's assuming we can get close enough to board them. We will, Beth said with certainty. One way or another, we're getting onto that ship. The Zephyrian command ship was now close enough that Jake could see details on its hull. Strange symbols glowed along the sides, probably their equivalent of ship markings. Smaller vessels moved around it like insects around a giant. Sam, open a channel to the War Marshal. Channel open, sir. Jake stood up and faced the main screen. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Liberty. I'm ready to begin. The screen flickered and showed the interior of the Zephyrian command ship. The War Marshal stood in the center of what looked like a crystal garden. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. When he spoke, his voice was like music played through broken glass. I am War Marshal Keithvar of the Zephyrian Empire. You have amused me with your pathetic attacks on my scouts. Now you will die with honor, as befits a warrior. We'll see about that, Jake replied. Keithvar tilted his head, studying Jake with eyes like black diamonds. You interest me, human. Your species fights with no logic, no organization. Yet you have caused me considerable inconvenience. How do you explain this? Jake smiled. We're just getting started. The War Marshal's expression didn't change, but Jake could sense his confusion. Zephyrians clearly weren't used to enemies who talked back. Begin, Kethvar said simply. The duel was about to start. Jake looked around his bridge one last time, at the faces of the crew who had become his family. They were ready. All right, people, he said quietly. Let's show them what humanity is made of. The Liberty turned toward the massive Zephyrian command ship and began its final attack run. Around them, 200 enemy vessels watched in silence as one small human ship prepared to challenge an empire. The battle began in silence. The USS Liberty and the Zephyrian command ship faced each other across empty space like two ancient warriors preparing to duel. Captain Jake Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair as War Marshal Kethvar's massive vessel began to glow with building energy. "Tony, fire everything!" Jake shouted. Lieutenant Commander Tony Garcia unleashed every weapon the Liberty had. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, and railguns all fired at once in the chaotic pattern they had practiced. The barrage struck the Zephyrian ship's shields, creating a light show of explosions and energy discharges. The enemy ship barely moved. Its shields absorbed the attack easily, barely flickering under the assault. Then Kethvar fired back. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the command ship, so bright it hurt to look at. Chief Navigator Ryan Holmes threw the Liberty into a wild spin, but the beam clipped their port side. Alarms blared as sections of the hull melted away like ice in fire. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 9, Chief Engineer Kelly Brooks shouted over the noise. "Emergency force fields are holding, but barely." Jake felt the ship shudder around him. They had taken more damage in 5 seconds than in all their previous battles combined, but they were still alive, and that surprised him. "Amanda, why aren't we dead?" Dr. Amanda Price was frantically studying her sensors. "He's toying with us. That shot could have destroyed us completely, but he aimed for a non-critical section." Jake understood. The War Marshal wasn't trying to kill them quickly. He wanted to humiliate them in front of his fleet. That arrogance might be their only chance. "Ryan, take us into the asteroid field." "Sir, do it. Use the asteroids as cover." The Liberty dove toward the debris field where Mars used to orbit. Ryan weaved between chunks of rock and metal, using them as shields against the Zephyrian ship's massive weapons. Kethvar followed, but his ship was too large to maneuver easily among the asteroids. The War Marshal was forced to either blast through the debris or move more carefully. "He's getting frustrated," Amanda reported. "I'm picking up communications between his ship and the fleet. They're asking permission to assist him." "What's his response?" "He's refusing help. His pride won't let other ships join the duel." Jake smiled grimly. "Good. Tony, prepare the mining charges." They had loaded their cargo bay with every mining explosive they could find in the Mars debris field. The charges weren't military weapons, but they had discovered that Zephyrian shields weren't designed to handle that type of explosion. "Charges. Ready, Captain. Wait for my signal." The Liberty spun around a large asteroid and came face to face with the command ship. For a moment, the two vessels hung motionless, staring at each other across a few hundred meters of space. Jake could see War Marshal Kethvar through the crystalline hull of his ship. The alien looked angry now, his silver skin glowing brighter with emotion. "Tony, fire the charges, all of them." Dozens of mining explosives shot out from the Liberty's cargo bay. They weren't guided missiles, just simple bombs with timers. But they filled the space between the two ships with a cloud of explosions. The Zephyrian shields flared and sparked as they tried to handle the chaotic energy patterns. For the first time in the battle, Kethvar's ship actually moved backward, pushed by the force of the blasts. "It's working," Kelly shouted. "His shields are fluctuating." Jake saw their chance. "Ram them, full speed." Ryan pushed the engines to maximum power. The Liberty shot forward through the cloud of explosions, heading straight for the Zephyrian command ship. But Kethvar was ready. Energy beams lanced out from dozens of weapon ports, all targeted at the Liberty's reactor core. The human ship's shields collapsed instantly under the concentrated fire. "Reactor containment failing," Kelly screamed. "We have maybe 30 seconds before core breach." The Liberty was dying, but it was still moving forward. Jake could see the crystalline hull of the enemy ship growing larger on the main screen. They were going to make it. They were actually going to ram the most powerful ship in the Zephyrian fleet. Then everything changed. "Captain," Sergeant Major Beth Collins shouted from the back of the bridge. My Marines are reporting something impossible. The cargo bay doors are opening on the Zephyrian ship. Jake spun around to stare at her. What? They're opening docking bays. I think they want us to board them. Amanda looked up from her sensors in amazement. She's right, they're not trying to destroy us anymore. They're trying to capture us. Jake felt a chill of understanding. Kethvar wasn't just arrogant, he was curious. The War Marshal had never faced an enemy like humans before, and he wanted to study them up close. New plan, Jake announced. Beth, get your Marines ready for boarding action. Sir? If they want to capture us, we'll let them, right up until we're inside their ship. Beth grinned fiercely. Understood, Captain. The Liberty crashed into the Zephyrian command ship, but not in the way Jake had planned. Instead of ramming the hull, they were pulled into a massive docking bay by some kind of tractor beam. The impact was hard, but not fatal. Emergency lights flickered on as the ship's systems began shutting down. The reactor was still critical, but they had maybe 5 minutes before it exploded. Everyone out, Jake ordered. Beth, lead the way, Sergeant. Major Collins and her Marines were already moving. They had spent weeks planning for this moment, studying the layout of Zephyrian ships and preparing for close combat in alien environments. The cargo bay of the enemy ship was enormous, filled with crystalline structures that hummed with energy. Zephyrian soldiers were waiting for them, but they clearly expected the humans to surrender. They were wrong. Beth's Marines attacked immediately, using weapons and tactics that the aliens had never seen. Instead of fighting in formation, they scattered and used the crystal structures as cover. Instead of firing in organized volleys, they shot from all directions at once. The Zephyrians tried to respond with their standard tactics, but their perfect formations were useless in the chaotic environment of their own cargo bay. This way, Beth shouted, leading a charge toward what looked like a control room. Jake followed with the rest of his crew. Behind them, the Liberty's reactor was counting down to explosion. They had maybe 3 minutes now. They fought their way through corridors filled with confused aliens. The Zephyrians had never dealt with enemies who fought inside their own ships. Their weapons were designed for space combat, not close-quarters battle. Finally, they reached the command center. War Marshal Kethvar stood in the middle of his crystal garden surrounded by his officers. He looked more puzzled than afraid. Impossible, he said in his musical voice. You were defeated. Why do you continue to fight? Jake stepped forward, his weapon pointed at the alien commander. Because we're human. We don't know how to quit. But you have lost. Your ship is destroyed. Your species will be conquered. What purpose does this serve? Jake smiled. You really don't understand, do you? This was never about winning. This was about sending a message. What message? That you can be beaten. Before Kethvar could respond, Jake activated his communicator. Sam, are you ready? Lieutenant Sam Rivers' voice crackled over the radio from somewhere else in the ship. Ready, Captain. Broadcasting on all frequencies. Jake looked directly at War Marshal Kethvar. You've conquered dozens of species because they fought the way you expected them to fight. But humans are different. We don't follow your rules. We don't use your tactics. And we never ever give up. This proves nothing, Kethvar said, but his voice was uncertain. It proves everything, Jake replied. Your own fleet is watching this. They're seeing their invincible war marshal captured by a handful of humans. How long do you think it will take for word to spread across the galaxy? Through the crystal windows of the command center, Jake could see the other Zephyrian ships. They were moving in confused patterns, no longer maintaining their perfect formations. Sir, Beth said quietly, the Liberty's reactor is about to go. Jake nodded. They had done what they came to do. The message was sent. Now it was time to pay the price. But as he watched the Zephyrian fleet through the windows, he realized something incredible was happening. Ships were breaking formation. Some were actually retreating. Others were just hanging motionless in space as if their crews didn't know what to do. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrians were facing an enemy they couldn't understand. And fear was spreading through their ranks like wildfire. The Liberty exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the asteroid field. But by then the real damage was already done. The myth of Zephyrian invincibility was broken. War Marshal Kethvar stared at the expanding cloud of debris where the human ship had been. "What have you done?" he whispered. Jake smiled as Zephyrian guards surrounded him and his crew. "We've shown the galaxy that you can bleed, and once people know you can bleed, they'll never stop fighting you." 6 months later, the Zephyrian Empire was crumbling. Species across 3 galaxies had risen in rebellion, using the tactics that the crew of the USS Liberty had developed. The war wasn't over, but for the first time humanity and their allies believed they could win. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew had paid the ultimate price, but their sacrifice had changed everything. They had proven that sometimes one ship and one crew who refuse to surrender can alter the fate of the entire galaxy.
Sanctuary Station floated in the cold darkness between stars. It was old and tired, held together by desperate repairs and the prayers of those who lived inside its metal walls. 12,000 souls called this place home. They came from a dozen different worlds, speaking languages that their translation devices struggled to understand. They were Torani, with gray skin and gentle eyes. They were Kelvari with 4 arms and voices like wind through hollow reeds. They were Veth and Morani and others whose worlds had burned when the Dominion came. Commander Veleth stood at the observation window of the command center and watched the stars. She was Torani, tall and thin, with silver hair that she kept short because there was no time for vanity anymore. She had been a scientist once, long ago, before the Dominion destroyed her research station and everyone she loved. Now she commanded this floating graveyard of hope, and she did her best to keep its people alive for one more day. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. She did not turn around because she already knew who it was. Roan was young for a Kelvari, barely 30 cycles old, and he walked with the nervous energy of someone who had not yet learned that some problems could not be solved by moving faster. "Commander," he said, and his voice carried the weight of terrible news. Veleth closed her eyes for a moment. She had heard that tone before, many times, and it never brought anything good. "Tell me," she said. "Dominion scout ships, 3 of them. They found us 6 hours ago and jumped to hyperspace before our sensors could track them." Roan paused, and when he spoke again his voice was smaller. "They will bring the fleet. Standard protocol. 16 hours, maybe less." Veleth opened her eyes and looked at the stars again. Somewhere out there, Dominion warships were already preparing to jump. They would come with overwhelming force, because the Dominion never took chances. They would demand surrender and then they would kill anyone who resisted and enslave everyone who did not. This was how it always happened. This was how 100 worlds had fallen. "Sound the alert," she said quietly. "Begin evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. Move families to the intersections where the hull is strongest." Roan hesitated. "Commander, our escape pods cannot outrun Dominion interceptors. If we launch them, they will simply be captured in open space." "I know." Veleth finally turned to face him. Her eyes were calm in a way that frightened him. "But it gives people something to do. Something to focus on. That matters more than you might think." The next hour was chaos. Alarms echoed through the station's corridors, and people ran in every direction. Some grabbed their children and their most precious belongings and hurried toward the designated shelter zones. Others stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. A few simply sat down where they were and began to cry. Veleth walked through it all with steady steps. She spoke to those who needed comfort and gave orders to those who needed purpose. She helped an elderly Morani find his medication and carried a lost Veth child back to her parents. She did these small things because they were all she could do, and because kindness still mattered, even at the end of everything. In the lower sections of the station, a Torani woman named Kethi held her daughter close. The girl was called Sarah, and she was 7 years old with curious eyes and a smile that could light up even the darkest corridors. Sarah did not fully understand what was happening, but she understood that the adults were afraid, and that frightened her more than anything else. "Mother," she whispered, Are we going to die? Keithy stroked her daughter's hair and tried to find words that would not be lies. She had promised herself long ago that she would never lie to Sira, but the truth was too heavy for a child to carry. I do not know, she finally said. But I know that I love you. And I will stay with you no matter what happens. Sira thought about this for a moment. Will someone come to help us? Keithy did not answer. She simply held her daughter tighter and prayed to gods she no longer believed in. In the command center, Veleth worked with her small team to prepare what defenses they had. Their weapons were old and weak, designed to fight off pirates and debris, not warships. Their shields could barely stop a meteorite, let alone military-grade plasma. They had no fighters, no missiles, nothing that could threaten a Dominion fleet. But Veleth armed her people anyway. She diverted power from non-essential systems to the shield generators. She positioned volunteers at every airlock, with whatever weapons they could find. She knew it was meaningless, but she refused to simply wait for death. Her people would face the end on their feet, not on their knees. Roan approached her with a datapad in his upper hands. Commander, I found something strange in the long-range sensor logs. Veleth did not look up from her console. Strange how? A signal. Very faint, buried in the background radiation. It is not Dominion. It is not any species in our database. He hesitated. I almost missed it completely. Our systems barely recognized it as artificial. Now Veleth looked up. Show me. Roan handed her the datapad. The signal was indeed faint. Little more than a whisper against the noise of the universe. But there was a pattern to it. A structure that could only be intentional. The translation systems had managed to decode one fragment, a phrase that repeated over and over. Hold your position. Help is coming. Veleth stared at the words for a long time. Then she shook her head and handed the datapad back to Roan. Ghost signal, she said. An echo from some dead civilization's automated beacon. The galaxy is full of them. But what if it is real? What if someone is actually coming? No one is coming, Roan. Veleth returned to her work, her voice flat and tired. No one has ever come. The great powers that once protected the weak are gone. The Dominion rules half the galaxy, and the other half hides in shadows hoping to be overlooked. We broadcast distress signals for 3 years, and no one answered. No one will answer now. Roan wanted to argue, but he could not find the words. He looked at the datapad one more time, at that strange message from the void, and he wondered who had sent it. He wondered if somewhere out there, in the darkness between stars, someone had heard their cries for help. But hope was a dangerous thing in times like these. Hope made you weak. Hope made you believe that tomorrow might be better. And when tomorrow came with fire and death, hope made the end hurt even more. Roan deleted the signal from the log and returned to his duties. There was work to be done, and very little time to do it. 16 hours. That was all they had. 16 hours until the Dominion arrived, and Sanctuary Station became another name on the long list of places that no longer existed. Veleth stood alone at the observation window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, death was coming for them. And no matter how hard she tried, she could not stop it. She could only wait. The hours passed like cold water dripping through cracks in stone. Each minute felt longer than the one before, stretched thin by fear and anticipation. The people of Sanctuary Station moved through their routines with hollow eyes and trembling hands. They hugged their families and said things they should have said long ago. They forgave old grudges and made peace with old enemies. They did all the things that people do when they know the end is near. Veleth did not sleep. She stood at her post in the command center and watched the sensor displays, waiting for the moment when death would appear on her screens. Her officers worked around her in tense silence, checking systems that did not need checking and running simulations that always ended the same way. No one spoke about the future because there was no future to speak about. In the shelter zones, families huddled together in the dim emergency lighting. The station had reduced power to everything except essential systems, and the corridors were cold and dark. Children asked questions that their parents could not answer. Why is this happening? What did we do wrong? Why does no one help us? Sierra sat with her mother in a corner of Shelter Zone 7. She had brought her favorite toy, a small stuffed animal that looked like a creature from her homeworld. The creature had been called a Villani, and they had gone extinct when the Dominion burned her planet. Now this toy was the only Villani left in the universe, and Sarah held it tight against her chest. "Mother," she said quietly, "I am scared." Kethy pulled her daughter close. "I know, little one. I am scared too. Is being scared bad?" Kethy thought about this question for a moment. "No," she said finally. "Being scared means you understand that something dangerous is happening. It means you are paying attention. The only time being scared is bad is when it stops you from doing what needs to be done. What needs to be done? Being brave, taking care of each other, remembering that we are not alone." Kethy kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Can you be brave for me?" Sarah nodded, though her eyes were still wet with tears. "I will try." 8 hours remained when Roan discovered something that made his blood run cold. He checked the readings 3 times, hoping he was wrong, but the sensors did not lie. He walked to where Velith stood and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Commander, they are here." The Dominion fleet just emerged from hyperspace. Velith turned sharply. "That is impossible. They should not arrive for another 8 hours. They must have pushed their engines beyond safe limits. They wanted to catch us before we could prepare." Roan's hands trembled as he pointed to the display. 23 warships, 3 carrier class, 8 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers. They have enough firepower to crack a planet. Velith looked at the display and felt something cold settle into her chest. She had known this moment was coming, but seeing it made everything real in a way that imagination could not capture. 23 warships against 1 broken station. It was not a battle. It was an execution. How long until they reach weapons range? 40 minutes, maybe less if they accelerate. Velith nodded slowly. She had 40 minutes to prepare her people for something that could not be prepared for. She had 40 minutes to say goodbye to 12,000 souls who had trusted her to keep them safe. She activated the station-wide communication system. Her voice echoed through every corridor and every shelter zone, reaching every ear on Sanctuary Station. "This is Commander Velith. The Dominion fleet has arrived. They will be in weapons range within the hour." She paused, searching for words that might bring some comfort. "I know many of you are afraid. I am afraid too. But I want you to know that it has been my greatest honor to serve as your commander. You are refugees, yes. You are survivors, but more than that, you are proof that kindness and hope can exist even in the darkest times. The Dominion may take our lives today, but they cannot take what we have built together. They cannot take our courage or our love for one another. Whatever happens in the next hour, I want you to remember that you are not alone. We face this together. As we have faced everything together." She ended the transmission and stood in silence. Around her, the officers of the command center worked with renewed determination. Some had tears on their faces, but their hands were steady. They would do their duty until the very end. The Dominion fleet advanced slowly. They did not hurry, because there was no need to hurry. Their prey was trapped and helpless, and they wanted to savor the moment. At the center of the formation, aboard the flagship called Eternal Wrath, Warlord Kreth watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Kreth was old for a Dominion officer, nearly 200 cycles, and he had spent most of those cycles bringing death to those who defied his empire. He was tall and broad, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like chips of black ice. He had conquered 17 worlds and enslaved millions. He had burned libraries and temples and hospitals. He had done things that would make lesser beings weep, and he had never lost a moment of sleep over any of it. "Open a channel to the station," he commanded. His communications officer obeyed, and Kreth leaned forward to speak. His voice was smooth and cruel, like silk wrapped around a blade. "Attention, Sanctuary Station. This is Warlord Kreth of the Dominion Empire. You have been found guilty of harboring fugitives from Imperial justice. The sentence is death. However, I am feeling generous today. If you surrender immediately and open your airlocks, I will permit some of you to live as slaves. You will serve the Empire with your labor and your bodies, and in time, your children may earn the right to be treated as almost equal to real citizens. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. This is my only offer. You have 10 minutes to accept. If you refuse, I will destroy your station piece by piece, and I will make certain that the dying takes a very long time. The transmission ended, and silence filled the command center. Velith looked at her officers, at the fear and the anger and the desperate hope in their eyes. She thought about the children in the shelter zones, about Sierra and her stuffed Villani, about all the futures that would never happen if she made the wrong choice. But there was no right choice. There was only surrender or death, and Velith knew what the Dominion did to slaves. She knew about the mines where people worked until their bodies broke. She knew about the breeding facilities and the experimentation labs. She knew that death was sometimes a mercy. No response, she said quietly. We will not dignify that offer with a response. Roan nodded, and something like pride flickered in his eyes. Understood, Commander. They waited in silence as the minutes ticked away. The Dominion fleet grew larger on the displays, close enough now that their individual ships could be distinguished. Each one was a monument to cruelty, bristling with weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. 10 minutes passed. No response was sent. Kreth smiled aboard his flagship. He had expected nothing less. Prey always struggled, always fought, always believed that somehow they might survive. It made the killing more enjoyable. All ships, he commanded, begin the attack. Take your time. I want them to suffer. The Dominion fleet opened fire, and Sanctuary Station shuddered under the first wave of impacts. Alarms screamed, lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, a hull breach began venting atmosphere into the void. The end had begun. And then, in the darkness of space, something impossible happened. Space tore itself apart. There was no other way to describe what happened. One moment, there was only empty void, and the next moment, there was a wound in reality itself. It was not a hyperspace window, not the familiar blue shimmer that accompanied faster-than-light travel. This was something else entirely, a darkness deeper than the space between galaxies, edged with light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Every sensor on every ship screamed warnings. Every screen flickered with data that made no sense. Even Kreth, who had seen 1,000 battles and feared nothing in the known universe, felt something cold crawl up his spine. And then, from the heart of that impossible darkness, a ship emerged. It was enormous, larger than the Dominion flagship by a factor of 3. Its hull was angular and aggressive, covered in armor plates that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapon arrays lined its surface like teeth in the mouth of some ancient predator, and running lights glowed along its length with steady, patient menace. The ship moved with impossible grace for something so massive. It slid through the wound in space like a beast emerging from deep water, and behind it, the darkness sealed itself and vanished as if it had never existed. On Sanctuary Station, Roan stared at his displays with his mouth hanging open. His 4 hands had frozen over his console, unable to process what he was seeing. "Commander," he whispered. "Commander, what is that?" Velith did not answer. She could not answer. She simply stared at the image on the main screen, at this impossible vessel that had appeared from nothing. And she felt something she had not felt in years: hope. The ship's hull bore markings in a language that no one on the station recognized. Angular letters, sharp and precise, spelling out words that the translation systems struggled to interpret. But beneath those strange letters, there was a translation in standard galactic script, as if the builders of this vessel had known that others would need to read it. USS Resolute. United Earth Navy. Humans, Velith breathed. That is a human warship. Roan shook his head in confusion. Humans? But humans are extinct. They were a primitive species on the edge of known space. The Dominion conquered their world 2 centuries ago. Apparently not. Velith felt a strange laugh building in her chest, something between joy and hysteria. Apparently not. Aboard the Dominion flagship, Kreth's mood had shifted from confidence to confusion to something approaching concern. His officers shouted reports at him, each one more alarming than the last. The unknown vessel was massive. Its energy signatures were off the scale. Its weapons systems were like nothing in any Dominion database. "Identify that ship," Kreth commanded. Now, his tactical officer worked frantically at his console. "Unknown design, my lord. Unknown power source. Unknown propulsion system. Unknown weapons configuration." His voice rose with each word. "We have no data on this vessel at all. It is as if it appeared from outside known space. Humans?" Kreth scoffed. "That is what the marking says. But humans were conquered generations ago. They were barely capable of spaceflight when we found them. Perhaps they were hiding, my lord. Perhaps they were building in secret." Kreth opened his mouth to respond. But before he could speak, his communications officer interrupted. "My lord, we are receiving a transmission. It is coming from the unknown vessel. Put it through." The main screen of the Dominion flagship flickered, and a face appeared. It was a human face, male, with dark hair cut short, and eyes the color of storm clouds. The human wore a uniform of deep blue with silver markings on the collar and shoulders. He sat in a command chair surrounded by displays and officers, and he looked at Kreth with an expression of calm, almost casual authority. "This is Captain Daniel Vance of the United Earth Navy vessel Resolute," the human said. His voice was steady and unhurried, as if he had all the time in the universe. "We received a distress signal from Sanctuary Station approximately 3 years ago. We apologize for the delay in responding. We had to come a very long way." Kreth recovered his composure quickly. He had faced strange enemies before. This was simply one more. Human. "Your species was supposed to be extinct. How did you survive?" Captain Vance smiled slightly. "We are very good at surviving. It is something of a specialty for our kind, but that is not why I am calling." His expression hardened, and his voice dropped to something colder. "You have attacked a refugee station under the protection of the United Earth Navy. You have threatened innocent civilians with death and slavery. This is unacceptable. Under your protection?" Kreth laughed. "I see no protection here. I see one ship against 23. The mathematics are simple, human. You cannot win." "That is a common misunderstanding about mathematics," Vance replied. "It assumes that all variables are equal. They are not." He leaned forward slightly. "You have 60 seconds to withdraw your fleet from this system. If you comply, you will be permitted to leave peacefully. If you do not comply, we will remove you. This is your only warning." Kreth stared at the screen for a moment, then burst into genuine laughter. "One ship threatens a Dominion battle fleet? You are either brave or insane. Human. Perhaps both." He gestured to his weapons officer. "All ships. Ignore the station for now. Focus all firepower on the human vessel. Destroy it." "Very well," Captain Vance said quietly. "You have made your choice." The transmission ended. The Dominion fleet pivoted with practiced coordination. 23 warships turned their weapons toward the lone human vessel and opened fire simultaneously. Plasma beams and missile salvos streaked across the void, converging on the Resolute from every direction. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. On Sanctuary Station, Velith watched the attack unfold with her heart in her throat. She had allowed herself to hope, foolishly, desperately, and now she would watch that hope die in a storm of fire. But the Resolute did not die. The ship moved. Not desperately, not frantically, but smoothly, deliberately, like a dancer stepping through choreographed motions. Some attacks missed entirely, others struck the hull and simply vanished, absorbed by some kind of shielding technology that the Dominion had never encountered. And then, the Resolute fired back. Its weapons were unlike anything Velith had ever seen. Beams of brilliant white light lanced out from the hull, each one finding its target with perfect precision. The first struck a Dominion destroyer and passed through its shields as if they did not exist. The second hit another destroyer with the same result. Both ships exploded in blossoms of fire and debris. 6 seconds. 2 warships destroyed. The Resolute kept firing. It moved through the Dominion formation like a predator through a herd of prey. And everywhere it went, death followed. Its weapons never missed. Its shields never faltered. It shrugged off attacks that would have vaporized any other vessel in the known galaxy. On the Dominion flagship, panic had replaced confidence. Officers shouted conflicting orders. Damage reports flooded in from every ship in the fleet. Kreith watched his tactical display with growing horror as his warships vanished one by one, reduced to expanding clouds of wreckage. "Fall back," he commanded. "All ships, fall back. Regroup at the system's edge." But the Resolute was faster. It pursued the retreating Dominion ships with relentless efficiency, cutting them down before they could escape. One by one, the warships that had come to bring death found death instead. In 12 minutes, it was over. 14 Dominion warships destroyed. 9 more attempting to flee. Their engines pushed beyond safe limits. Their crews praying to whatever gods they believed in. The Resolute let none of them escape. When the last Dominion vessel exploded and its debris scattered across the void, Captain Vance opened a new channel. His voice reached every speaker on Sanctuary Station. Calm and reassuring. "Sanctuary Station, this is Resolute. Hostile forces have been neutralized. Do you require medical or engineering assistance?" Velith stood in the command center, surrounded by officers who were weeping openly. She looked at the tactical display, at the field of debris that had once been a Dominion battle fleet, and she realized that she was crying too. "Yes," she whispered into the communication channel. "Yes, we require assistance. We require everything you can give." "Understood," Vance replied. "Hold your position. We are on our way." Somewhere in the shelter zones, a little girl named Sira looked up at her mother with wonder in her eyes. "Someone came," she said. "Mother, someone actually came." Kethy held her daughter close and let the tears flow freely down her face. "Yes, little one. Someone came." For the first time in 3 years, the people of Sanctuary Station allowed themselves to believe that tomorrow might actually arrive. The debris field stretched across 300,000 kilometers of space. Twisted metal and shattered hulls drifted in the silence. All that remained of the mighty Dominion fleet that had come to bring death to Sanctuary Station. Here and there, small fires still burned where oxygen had not yet escaped into the void. Emergency beacons pulsed weakly from escape pods. But there would be no rescue for those who had served Warlord Kreth. The Resolute moved through this graveyard with careful grace, its sensors scanning for any threat that might remain. There were none. The battle had been thorough, clinical, absolute. 23 warships had entered this system with confidence and cruelty. None had left. On Sanctuary Station, the people emerged from their shelter zones with hesitant steps and disbelieving eyes. They gathered at the observation windows and stared at the debris field, at the proof that the impossible had actually happened. Some wept, some laughed, some simply stood in silence, unable to process what they were seeing. Velith remained in the command center, coordinating with her officers to assess the damage to the station. It was significant, but not catastrophic. Several hull breaches had been sealed by emergency systems. Power fluctuations had caused failures in non-essential areas. A few dozen people had been injured. But the medical teams reported no fatalities. No fatalities. After everything they had faced, after the attack that should have killed them all, no one had died. "Commander," Roan said softly, "the human ship is hailing us again." Velith nodded and accepted the transmission. Captain Vance appeared on the screen, his expression warm and concerned. Behind him, she could see his bridge crew working at their stations with quiet efficiency. "Commander Velith," he said, "my medical teams are standing by to assist with your wounded. We also have engineering crews ready to help repair critical systems. With your permission, I would like to send a delegation to your station to coordinate relief efforts." Velith found herself smiling despite everything. "Permission granted, Captain. And may I say, on behalf of everyone aboard this station, thank you. You saved our lives. Vance nodded solemnly. We were glad to help. That is why we came. He paused for a moment. I should warn you, Commander. My crew will look different from most species you have encountered. Humans come in many variations. We hope this will not cause any discomfort. Captain, you could have tentacles and breathe fire, and we would welcome you with open arms. You saved us from the Dominion. Nothing else matters. Vance laughed, a warm sound that made Velith like him even more. No tentacles, I am afraid. But I appreciate the sentiment. Our shuttle will arrive in 15 minutes. The transmission ended, and Velith turned to her officers. Prepare the main docking bay for their arrival. I want honor guards and a proper welcome. These humans have earned our respect. 15 minutes later, Velith stood at the entrance to docking bay 4 with Roan beside her. Behind them, a small crowd of station residents had gathered. Unable to stay away from this historic moment, children peeked around their parents' legs with wide eyes. Elderly survivors who had lost everything stood straight and proud, determined to show their gratitude with dignity. The human shuttle entered the bay with smooth precision. It was smaller than Velith had expected, angular like its parent vessel, but elegant in its simplicity. The engines powered down, and a ramp descended from the craft's underside. 3 figures emerged. The first was Captain Daniel Vance himself. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and a confident stride. His uniform was crisp and perfect, and he moved with the easy authority of someone accustomed to command. His face was kind but serious, marked by lines that suggested he had seen much and forgotten nothing. Beside him walked a woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her uniform bore slightly different markings, and her eyes swept the docking bay with professional alertness. This was Commander Lisa Cortez, the ship's executive officer, and she carried herself like a soldier who had fought many battles. The third figure was a man of shorter stature, with gentle features and calm eyes. He carried a medical kit in one hand and wore the insignia of a healer on his collar. This was Dr. Nathan Park, Chief Medical Officer of the Resolute, and his expression radiated compassion. Velith stepped forward to meet them. She had prepared a formal speech, words of gratitude and diplomatic welcome. But when she opened her mouth, something different came out. How? She asked simply. How did you do that? The Dominion fleet was the most powerful force in this sector. They have conquered worlds. They have destroyed civilizations, and you destroyed them in minutes. How is that possible? Vance smiled slightly. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. The story is long, and your people deserve to hear it too. But there are matters of security that must be considered first. Velith nodded and led them to a small conference room off the main corridor. Roan joined them, along with 2 of Velith's most trusted advisors. When the door closed and they were alone, Vance began to speak. 200 years ago, he said, humanity was young. We had just begun to explore beyond our home system when we detected signals from other civilizations. We were excited. We thought we were joining a community of peaceful explorers. We were wrong. He paused, and something dark flickered in his eyes. We learned very quickly that the galaxy was not a friendly place. We learned about the Dominion and their empire of slaves. We learned about the great powers that had once stood against them and fallen. We learned that species like ours, young and weak and naive, were seen as nothing more than resources to be harvested. Commander Cortez picked up the narrative. We had a choice. We could reveal ourselves and hope for mercy, knowing that mercy was unlikely. We could hide and pray that no one found us. Or we could use the time we had to become something that no one would dare threaten. Her voice hardened. We chose the third option. For 2 centuries, Vance continued, humanity worked in secret. We developed technology that the rest of the galaxy had never imagined. We built ships and weapons and defenses that could stand against anything the Dominion could field. We trained our people for war while hoping we would never have to fight. And we waited. Waited for what? Roan asked. For the right moment. Vance looked directly at Velith. We received your distress signal 3 years ago. We had been monitoring galactic communications for decades, listening for exactly this kind of call. People in danger. People who needed help, people who had no one else to turn to. But you took 3 years to respond, Velith said. Why? Distance. Your station is very far from our home. Even with our advanced propulsion systems, the journey took time, but we came as fast as we could. Vance leaned forward. Commander, I want you to understand something. We did not develop this technology to conquer. We did not build these weapons to create our own empire. We did it so that, when we heard someone crying for help, we would be able to answer. Velith felt tears threatening to fall again. Why? Why would you do all of this for strangers? We are nothing to you. We have nothing to offer. You are people, Vance said simply. You are living beings who deserve to be safe. That is enough. That has always been enough. He reached out and gently touched her arm. Humanity learned long ago that the measure of a civilization is not its power or its wealth. It is how that civilization treats those who cannot protect themselves. We chose to be protectors. We chose to be the ones who answer when no one else will. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Dr. Park spoke for the first time, his voice soft and warm. Commander, I would very much like to help your wounded now, if that is acceptable. We have medical technology that may be able to treat injuries your systems cannot, and my team has brought supplies, food, medicine, everything we could carry. Velith nodded, unable to speak. She led them out of the conference room and into the corridors of the station, where her people waited with hope in their eyes. The humans had come. After centuries of darkness, after years of despair, after countless prayers that went unanswered, someone had finally heard their call, and everything was about to change. The next several hours transformed Sanctuary Station into something it had not been in years, a place of hope. Human medical teams moved through the corridors with quiet efficiency, treating wounds that the station's limited facilities could not handle. Human engineers worked alongside Kelvari and Torani technicians to repair damaged systems. Human supply officers distributed food and medicine and clothing to people who had grown accustomed to doing without. Velith walked through it all in a kind of dream. Everywhere she looked, she saw her people smiling. Children laughed as they explored the strange devices the humans had brought. Elderly survivors wept with joy as pain they had lived with for years vanished under the care of human doctors. Even the most hardened skeptics, those who had stopped believing in anything good, found themselves unable to resist the warmth that the newcomers radiated. In the main medical bay, Dr. Nathan Park worked with gentle hands and a calming voice. He treated burns and fractures and illnesses that had gone untended for too long. He spoke softly to each patient, learning their names and their stories, making them feel seen in ways they had almost forgotten were possible. A small gray hand tugged at his sleeve. He looked down to find a young Torani girl staring up at him with enormous, curious eyes. She was maybe 7 years old, with silver hair like spun moonlight and a worn stuffed animal clutched tightly in her arms. "Hello there," Park said, kneeling down to meet her gaze. "What is your name?" "Sira," the girl said. "My mother said I should not bother you, but I wanted to ask you something. You are not bothering me at all. What did you want to ask?" Sira hesitated, gathering her courage. "Are you really from a place called Earth?" Park smiled. "I am. We all are. Earth is our home. Far away from here. Is it beautiful?" The question hit Park harder than he expected. He thought about Earth, about the world his species had nearly destroyed with war and pollution and greed. He thought about the generations of struggle to heal what they had broken. He thought about the blue oceans that sparkled under golden sunlight, and the forests that had slowly returned to lands once scarred by industry. He thought about mountains capped with snow and deserts painted in shades of red and orange and gold. "Yes," he said softly. "It is the most beautiful place in the universe. And someday, if you want, we will show it to you." Sira's eyes widened. "Really? I could go there? When this is all over, when the galaxy is safe again, I think there will be many exchanges between our peoples. Human children will visit Torani worlds, and Tarani children will visit Earth. You will see things you cannot imagine now." He reached out and gently patted the stuffed animal in her arms. "What is this creature called?" "See first. A Villani. They lived on my homeworld before the Dominion came. Now, they are all gone. This is the only one left." Park looked at the worn toy with new understanding. "Then we must take very good care of it. Things that are the last of their kind are precious beyond measure." Sira nodded solemnly. "I will protect it forever. I believe you will." Kethy appeared behind her daughter, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. "I am so sorry, Doctor. She was supposed to stay in the shelter zone. Please do not apologize. Sarah and I were having a wonderful conversation." Park stood and offered Kethy a warm smile. "You have a remarkable daughter. Her curiosity is a gift." Kethy's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Thank you for everything. I did not believe anyone would come for us. I had stopped hoping. Hope is difficult to maintain in dark times. But sometimes, when hope seems most impossible, that is when help arrives." Park placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are safe now. We will make sure of that." In the command center, Veleth sat with Captain Vance, in the same conference room where they had spoken before. The urgency had faded, replaced by a quieter conversation between two leaders who were beginning to understand each other. "What happens now?" Veleth asked. "You saved us today, but the Dominion will not forget this. When they learn what happened here, they will send more ships. They will come in greater numbers. They will want revenge." Vance nodded thoughtfully. "They will. But they will find that we are ready for them. The Resolute is just one ship in a very large fleet. Humanity has been preparing for this moment for 200 years. We have vessels stationed throughout the galaxy, waiting for the signal to reveal themselves. How many ships?" "Enough." Vance met her eyes directly. "Enough to make the Dominion think twice before attacking anyone under our protection. Enough to change the balance of power in this galaxy forever." Veleth leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed by the implications. "You have been watching. All this time, you have been watching the galaxy suffer. And you did nothing. We were not ready." Vance's voice carried a weight of regret. "We knew that if we revealed ourselves too soon, the Dominion would destroy us before we could make a difference. We needed time to grow strong enough to matter. Every day we waited, people died. We know this. We carry that knowledge with us always." He paused. "But we are ready now. And we will not wait any longer. What do you intend to do?" "Everything." Vance stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the stars. "We will answer every distress call. We will protect every refugee. We will stand between the weak and those who would prey upon them. And when the Dominion comes for us, we will teach them that there are some things in this universe that cannot be conquered." Veleth joined him at the window. "That sounds like a war." "Perhaps, or perhaps it sounds like justice. The Dominion has ruled through fear for too long. They have destroyed civilizations and enslaved billions because no one was strong enough to stop them. But strength is not just about weapons and warships. Strength is about choosing to stand for something greater than yourself." He turned to face her. "We choose to stand for the people who cannot stand for themselves. That is what humanity has decided to be. And after? If you defeat the Dominion, what then? Will you become the new empire?" Vance shook his head. "No. We have seen what empires do. They take and consume and eventually collapse under their own weight. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to protect it. When the threat is gone, we will help rebuild what was destroyed. We will share our knowledge and our resources. We will create a community of equals, where every species has a voice, and every world has a future." Veleth studied him for a long moment. "You truly believe this is possible?" "I believe that anything is possible if enough people are willing to work for it. Humanity nearly destroyed itself many times in our history. We fought wars over land and resources and ideas. We poisoned our world and hunted our fellow creatures to extinction. But we learned. We grew. We became something better than we were. He smiled. If we can change, so can the galaxy. A soft chime interrupted their conversation. Vance checked his communicator, and his expression shifted to something more urgent. Another distress call, he said. A colony world, 2 systems away. Dominion raiders. You have to go. Yes. He turned back to Veleth and extended his hand in a gesture of farewell. More ships will arrive within the week. Hospital vessels, supply transports. Everything your people need. You will not be abandoned again. Veleth took his hand and held it firmly. Thank you, Captain, for everything. Thank you, Commander, for holding on long enough for us to find you. An hour later, the Resolute departed. Veleth watched from the observation deck as the great warship powered up its mysterious engines and tore another hole in the fabric of space. For a moment, she could see something beyond that darkness. A glimpse of distant stars and swirling light. Then, the ship was gone, and the void sealed itself behind it. Sira stood beside her, the stuffed Villani still clutched in her arms. Will they come back? Yes, Veleth said with absolute certainty. They will come back, and they will bring others. The humans are not going to let us down. How do you know? Veleth knelt down to look the girl in the eyes. Because they came when no one else would. Because they risked their lives for people they had never met, because that is who they choose to be. She smiled and touched Sira's cheek gently. The darkness is not gone yet. There will be more battles, more danger, more difficult days ahead. But for the first time, in a very long time, we are not facing it alone. Sarah thought about this for a moment, then nodded with the simple acceptance of a child. I like the humans, she said. They are kind. Yes, Veleth agreed, looking out at the stars where the Resolute had vanished. They are. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between worlds, humanity continued its mission. They answered calls that had gone unanswered for centuries. They stood against cruelty and protected the innocent. They brought hope to places that had forgotten what hope felt like. The long silence was over. Earth had returned to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again.